Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume with 11 new car brands and over 900 used vehicles, all in one location. And we're proud to support our local schools and community. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier car dealer locally and family owned for over 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Just like the leaves this fall, the deals at Insane Radio Deals are falling fast and saving you a bunch of money. Whether it's gift cards to great food like the Yard on 5th Street, JD's Cafe, the Caribbean Jerk Pot, or Donnie D's Bagels. Or great experiences like Aqua Trek Adventures, Rise Up Climbing, or Cross White Athletic Club. Liberty Flame fan? Well, we have tickets to any Liberty home game the rest of this season, as well as memberships to a Sea of Red. Falling deals and saving money. All at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
More than 80 million Americans depend on AM radio each month for news, weather, and emergency information. A new bill in Congress would make sure AM radio remains in cars, because when cell and internet services are down, this free service could be your only lifeline. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress to support the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Getting together with friends and family is one of life's greatest joys. But with the rise in misleading rumors that have sparked some confusion and worry about vaccines, our treasured community immunity could be at risk. It's true. Together, we are all healthier when everyone is vaccinated. So let's get together and let's thrive together. Talk with your pediatrician today about keeping up or catching up on routine childhood immunization. This message is brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatrics.
VTR in Sports, powered by ESPN Radio. The games are played here. Catch all the NFL action. Sunday, the game in Dublin. Vikings and Steelers, 9:15 airtime. Then Commanders and Falcons, Ravens at Chiefs, and Packers at Dallas. And then Packers at the Cowboys for Sunday Night Football. Then a Monday doubleheader. Jets at Dolphins. Hour starts at 6. And Bengals at Broncos. Catch the games on VTR in Sports, 93.3 FM, 1320 AM, and the VTR in Sports app. And on your smart speaker, open VTR in Sports.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app. 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Do you have those words out there that you've heard so often that it basically seems like it's a word that should be in the Merriam-Webster's dictionary? Or for those that are not as old as I am, pushing 40 years old and used to use the hard copy of it, dictionary.com to figure out if it's a real word. Desensitized. Is that a word that you've ever heard? You've all of a sudden, it doesn't faze you the way that it used to, TJ. Is that a word you've heard or a phrase you've heard before?
Yes, I've heard that word plenty of times.
Okay, yes. Well, the reason for bringing it up is Bruce Pearl, the Auburn men's basketball coach, today announced he would be stepping away, and his son will be taking over for this season. And, I mean, let's call it what it is. It's kind of like when Tony Bennett, and more on this in a moment, but when Tony Bennett stepped away last year, late to the start of the season, I genuinely believe Tony Bennett came to the realization that close to the start of the season of, I don't have it in me to do it in this current unregulated environment anymore. I don't begrudge him for it. But in doing so that late, you kind of were shoe old if you were Virginia into giving Ron Sanchez a chance. Personally, maybe if Jason Williford were the coach as opposed to Ron Sanchez, great X's and O's guy, smart guy, but just didn't quite have the level of charisma for a head coach. We've kind of seen it at Charlotte, now at Virginia. I think there's enough data out there that Sanchez would fall under the great assistant, not great head coach. But by the timing of it, you knew that it was going to have to be an internal candidate. But the other realization is, when I even heard the news of Bruce Pearl today, like when Tony Bennett retired, and granted, there's the local angle to this, but there was a real like, oh my goodness, shock and all to it.
I remember listening to the Fast Lane when it happened too on the radio.
Yeah, I mean,
and you and Trey were like, oh my gosh, we just spoke to this guy at ACC Media Days, and now he's retired.
And not only that, but we're sitting there putting all of these guest flyers out there on the last second and having to let people know, hey, we understand we gave you like 20 minutes notice to come into the fast lane. And we were blessed that Junior Burrow, who is a friend of ours, the former Virginia grade, who's now an analyst and has done Virginia analyst work. And by the way, he's coached high school basketball, very insightful. But he joined us and we had a great chat. And, to get my usher on for a moment in the fast lane, and I understand there's some irony here that I am using usher to quote my faith in God. But in my faith in God and walk-in journey, I'm trying to get better at not worrying about these things. Emphasis on trying. I still fail regularly because here's a shocker, TJ. I have a bit of a control freak mechanism to me. Like I'm very, you sound shocked by it.
Really?
You sound real shocked. You had multiple versions of it for those watching at Fastlane, Edlane, and VTR and Sports on our social media platforms. But the Tony Bennett retirement has desensitized me to when Dave Clawson retired as the Wake Forest football coach this past offseason. Bruce Pearl retiring as Auburn's coach today. I just revert back to all of this, that no real retirement right now is even shocking or stunning. If Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, gosh, he's got to retire soon. I mean, that guy, I know he's Oklahoma State football, but he was cut out for what it was, not what it is. I mean, He is textbook example of it. You heard the game against Oregon till we mercifully ended it somehow for use air quotes here, better game, Vanderbilt at Virginia Tech a couple of weeks ago. Like, we mercifully ended that game early. But that was the official, this guy is toast moment. Dabo at Clemson, even if he were to retire suddenly, I think there's too much pride for Dabo to retire at all, much less this soon. And Clemson's tied to an onerous buyout for him, like so many programs are. Virginia Tech, count your blessings. You only had to pay $6 million a year for pride to go away. And if you include Fuente, that's $14.5 million a year. A lot, but Wisconsin's looking at more than that for one coach. Plenty of other programs are. So put this into context. But the Tony Bennett retirement is what has created a desensitization to any coach retirement at any point. Maybe outside of if Dabo just up and retired at the end of a game press conference, or if a coach did that, okay, I'd be like, whoa, that's something we haven't seen before. But anything else before the start of the season, right after the start of the season, at random points during the offseason, none of it is shocking at this point in time. It's noteworthy, but to me, the watershed moment, and granted, again, there's a local angle to this, but it was and will remain, TJ, the Tony Bennett retirement. You knew it was probably going to come at some point because Tony Bennett was not cut out for this era of college athletics. He grew disenfranchised when he spoke at the Georgia Tech game this past season when he honored him at halftime for his 15 years in Charlottesville. Tony Bennett, through all of that, mentioned that the joy of the 2019 championship in part is because he viewed it as the last true amateur championship season, because by the time they came back and started playing hoops in 2021 and competed for championships, remember, no COVID championship 2020. But in 2021, even though they were in the bubble in Indianapolis, the wheels had already started to get in motion of pay for play, and it only sped up and exacerbated to where we are full-fledged in that model now. So Tony Bennett was not going to, but that was kind of the last shock moment of a coach resigning or retiring outside of someone literally did it post-game press conference. Even on the tarmac, if you're fired Lane Kiffin style at USC, that's not shocking because we've seen it before. So that's just the interesting angle to the news of the day that kind of ties it back to a more local level about Auburn and Bruce Pearl's retirement. Now, that delayed it. We can't really play the take a detour and back from a detour sound bites here in the fast lane. Speaking of bigger picture, there are bigger picture thoughts to the Liberty Flames after their loss to JMU. I don't think that we're anywhere close to the Jamie Chadwell needs to go or Jamie Chadwell should be fired. Do there need to be hard looks and hard conversations internally about players with playing time, schematic changes and adjustments, things that can be done in the short term and probably need to be done in the long term? Absolutely. And some of this is a coaching staff learning on the fly about adaptation. When you're making a reported $4 million a year, which is the base salary of Jamie Chadwell, one of the highest in Group of 5 big-time sports, you have to deal with the fact that there are pressure and expectations to perform, and when you don't perform, people are going to call on changes. If we're talking about slow changes in high school sports or time for development, I get it and understand it, although there's some fan bases that are more patient than other fan bases. But when you're talking about it at Liberty, that's the case. But I am not a throw the coach out and fire him. You got to give him a chance to be willing to make changes. People said the same thing about Richie McKay. Oh, my goodness, it's not working in men's basketball. And guess what? He embraced the transfer portal like he never had and was able to find a way to identify the right blend of new blood, which the Flames needed, with cultural and talent fits. And you took some flyers that did not pan out. Isaiah Enan reportedly was on crutches at the Liberty game this weekend. I didn't see it, so I can't confirm or deny that. Maybe we'll know more when Richie McKay speaks with the media tomorrow. But that didn't pan out. Josh Smith had injury issues. But the flip side is you had ones that worked. Javon Moffmer was great for Liberty. Owen Aquino was a great transfer. And then obviously Talon Peters. So you're going to hit some and you're going to miss. But Coach McKay was willing to embrace the transfer portal while still finding guys that are a cultural fit. I don't think Jamie Chadwell is unwilling to do that. Liberty had a high volume of transfers this offseason. They haven't all panned out, and I do think there needs to be some, where did we go wrong? Where have we gone right with this? There are also some, what we need to do going forward. Because when Ethan Vasco played, it was not a great offense for Liberty. But again, multiple truths can exist. Jamie Chadwell and Liberty lost to a JMU team that, in spite of that, I thought JMU was better. I thought they were a more balanced team. Yeah. I thought they were a team that looked like they were able to perform well, and Liberty was not. And this goes back to what Bob Chesney said after that game about the impact from JMU's balanced offensive attack and how the ability to do that versus a Liberty offense right now that, when Vasco's in, there's the threat of the run and he's a better passer, but that's relatively speaking. Liberty is not that. It bore itself out, as Jamie Chadwell noted after the game.
Well, I mean, when you're that balanced, I think it's phenomenal if you could be that balanced. Now, it's not always the case, and it depends on what game you're in. And we were able to move them quite a bit in the second half, which allowed us to keep the ball on the ground. And at that point in time, we were just trying to run the clock out and trying to not give them the ball back and trying to separate ourselves with another touchdown, but make them really just kind of feel it as we were going through that fourth quarter. And then I think that led us late third quarter into the fourth. And I think that led to us being able to control the game pretty well.
That was Bob Chesney afterwards. I mean, it could not have gone better. And granted, Liberty's, the whole game plan changed when Ethan Vasco went out. I think you have to acknowledge that Liberty was asking a lot out of their defense before, and they've asked a lot out of their defense this year. And there have been a lot of issues the Flames have had defensively, particularly getting off the field and overcoming adversity. Again, topic for another day. We're not going to quite delve into that today. We'll do more on that, deep dive on the Flames throughout the rest of this week. But JMU had, 440 yards of total offense, as perfect as you could have drawn it up. 227 on the ground, 213 in the air versus a Flames team. And again, some of this is skewed by Ethan Vasco being out of the game, but the Flames had about half of that, 233 yards, and only 75 yards passing. They have not had much of a threat of a passing game with Vasco in, and then he goes out and it's basically non-existent, and that's such a difference. And you're getting an idea of JMU versus Liberty and where these programs are and the cyclical nature. And I think there's a part of this that needs to be reemphasized with Jamie Chadwell. Almost all these group of 5 programs, fans need to adjust their expectations because there's going to be a cyclical element of you hit it off, you have a really good crop of players, and those players, frankly, will go. CJ Daniels to LSU and then Miami, and deserve to go. CJ Daniels, LSU, and has performed very well for Miami. And then there's some that need to go because they need to figure out what's on the other side, because if they come back, they're going to be really miserable at Liberty. Caden Salter, it sure seemed when he was there. So you're going to hit those cycles. JMU is on the up part of that cycle with Chesney. You got a quarterback in Alonzo Barnett who's back. You got a lot of pieces that are there. Liberty, they've kind of downshifted. And I still think they're reeling from how last year unfolded. But for the Flames, it's kind of this juggling act as well versus the JMU team. And that's part of the disparity you saw in the 31-13 game where the margin was 18, but it never really felt that close.
Feels like they've also got underdeveloped quarterbacks. It felt like once the competition was with Brian Berger and Ethan Vasco, it felt like Michael Merdinger and Hawk were pushed to the side and not really given the reps they needed. And it also feels like Liberty struggles to recover, whereas JMU, interception for Brylan Green. Okay, let's go back out there. Let's try it again. Barnett, 12 straight completions. They're able to adjust from their mistakes.
Yeah, so much of it is. And a lot of that's good coaching. And I'm not saying Jamie Chadwell's a bad coach.
No.
Frankly, this is the first patch of adversity He was like 91-9 at Coastal Carolina.
Yeah.
Comes to Liberty, 12-0 in the regular season. They win the Conference USA Championship, and they make the Fiesta Bowl against the most talented team the Flames have ever played in 1A FBS football. I mean, let's just call it what it is. I know they beat Arkansas and they beat BYU and they beat Syracuse on the road and lost to them at home, and they almost beat Wake Forest, and they lost narrowly against NC State, and they had a game against Virginia Tech that, a 2-3 win Virginia Tech team. But they've had all of those games. Oregon was a different level of talent. I was there watching them on the field, watching future Commanders left tackle Josh Connerly, future chess piece Swiss Army knife running back of Tampa Bay, Bucky Irving, quarterback Bo Nix, among other players that still played in that game for Oregon. So let's not get that twisted. But I don't think that game changed Liberty. I think the preparedness and really understanding that when you have a successful run like that, you're just going to maybe lose your coach, but if not, you're going to lose a lot of players, and you have to have a system in place to develop those players. I think that's part of it, because you hit the nail on the head, TJ, that the injuries and the lack of development, and some of this is, again, multiple truths can exist. But Jamie Chadwell touched on this after the game. First of all, big picture. The Vasco injury itself just did flat out change a lot for Liberty.
Yeah. It changed a lot. That was, it comes back to you're missing Berger too. Ryan Berger would have been in the game if Ryan Berger's, who's got some experience, played a little bit. And so, it goes back to him, losing them. So now Mike, Mike's been our third guy, obviously, since Berger's been the second. And so him and Ethan are different players. And so you have to do things that you feel like he can help move the ball, and I thought he did a nice job on that first drive there. And then we wanted to bring in, we had in the game plan, there were some quarterback runs and some different things. So that's why we brought Houck in, because he's a bigger guy. And so, you try to use what they're best at.
So here's the thing. I don't dispute Jamie Chadwell's comment. It makes a lot of sense. Like, again, this idea of we need to fire Jamie Chadwell. This is not me. I'm not a Liberty fan. I didn't go there like TJ did and don't have ties to the school and everything else. I don't have that type of tie to Liberty. I haven't worked, with radio stations and media outlets around Liberty University. I cover them. We try to be as unbiased and fair and reasonable as possible here in the Fast Lane and at the Virginia Talk Radio Network when Trey Lyle talks about them as well during the morning warm-up from 7 to 8 a.m. But we're not in that spot. But for Jamie Chadwell, the Vasco injury, he's right. It's combined with the Ryan Berger injury. This is where I would look at this from a bigger picture element for Liberty. I don't think you need to get rid of Jamie Chadwell. I think Liberty does need to have better plan B and C's in place, and understanding heading into the offseason that you got a guy in Berger who already was concussed and has had a history of those type of injuries. This is a live and learn. When you are a run-heavy offense, which includes running the quarterback as part of that, if you deal with, aggravating shoulder injuries, Ethan Vasco, or upper body injuries. And we'll know more tomorrow. Again, when Chadwell speaks with the media, we might know more about the timetable for his injury, if it's day-to-day, week-to-week, what the status is, if it's longer term that. But when you're running quarterbacks, you need to have a plan B in place. And when you have a guy who's had chronic, regular football injuries, shoulders, legs, chests, arms, that type of stuff, bruises, tears, bumps, that's just part of playing football. I can get why you would take flyers on that. You're going to hit and miss on some of them. But the head injuries, that's where you got to be developing them a little bit differently. And this is not this is not Jamie Chadwell's insensitive to head injuries. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just you have to be able to read the future a little bit better, which leads me to wonder, I'm not saying he would have more power than Jamie Chadwell or even the same amount. But is it worth it for Liberty to bring in somebody, because everybody's doing this now with power programs, and Liberty, they have the resources of a power program. But is it worth bringing in for Liberty in the offseason somebody that can take on some kind of a general manager type role within the program and be a talent evaluator, a roster talent evaluator, even if it's kind of like what Scott Pioli did from the New England Patriots when he was with Virginia, who was not the official GM. He helped oversee the role, identify factors you want in that, help you structure it the way you would want as a program. Because there are some, we can all joke about Bill Belichick only answers to Jordan Hudson at North Carolina. And again, let's be real here. Lombardi's my guy, but Lombardi answers to Belichick. Like, he has been a mouthpiece on behalf of Bill Belichick. Let's call a spade when it comes to that. But Michael Lombardi is underneath Bill Belichick power-wise at North Carolina. There are others, Andrew Luck at Stanford, Ron Rivera at Cal, where you can debate the level of power. But Liberty basketball this offseason brought in a general manager, Stelios Sezukis. I might be butchering his name. If he's listening or someone else is, please correct me when I'm over at, actually, I will be there tomorrow.
Go home, the Bel Air!
For the men's basketball press conference, LA, Liberty Arena. Somebody can correct me on that. But for Liberty, this is where you look at this. This is not a throw the whole thing out. Jamie Chadwell's right. The quarterback injury changed a lot. Not having Ryan Berger has changed a lot. The offensive line, unexpectedly, they've had issues. I think there's some developmental things that need to be done in the offseason. And again, I still trust Bill Durkin, who's been a really good offensive line coach and has helped them overperform, I would say, last year relative to the talent. Again, to get my usher on for a moment in the fast lane, I think I underestimated just how much of a loss that was going to be. And again, we'll deep dive all these things because JMU exploited a lot of them in a bit of a different way. It was so balanced that they were able to hold that. Liberty was not. Inevitably, that's where you figure out where Liberty, they have room to improve. There are plenty of things that are worthwhile with Liberty that I still believe you can handle with Chadwell and the coaching staff there. Do there need to be some changes? Yes. Does it mean you need to fire everyone like Mike Gundy did out last offseason? How'd that work out for him? I think Gundy, again, toast Oklahoma State. And that guy, they need to find a way to move on from it. We're not at that point with Liberty. But it's reasonable to critique and say something's got to change because this is a 1-3 team that's now a 2-touchdown underdog against Old Dominion on the road this weekend in a game that I think you'll be at. Is that right?
Yes. Credentialed.
TJ_Wilkerson 8 on the socials to check him out, and Fastlane Ed Lane on ours for all the coverage as TJ will be there working hard and once again on site. But am I all base in saying that it's okay to believe that Chadwell can stick around? A lot of the schematics make sense, but there's got to be a better plan in place to execute it so that when plan A doesn't go according to plan, the injury to Ethan Vasco, that you need to know that with a running quarterback, there's a good likelihood that these guys are going to get injured. So your plan B better be up to par, and not saying Ryan Berger wasn't. You want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, but maybe like you hit on a moment ago, having more of an open quarterback competition during the offseason and getting more reps for Houck and Merdinger and Bradford as well, all of them, to see what you have in them, because there's a higher likelihood and you've got to be more prepared than you've been this year.
No, for sure. And I don't think Chadwell is Luke Fickell from Wisconsin in trouble, but I do think he's getting up there. But I think if Liberty wants to save the football program, you got to hit hard in the transfer portal. You only get one window now in January. So you got to hit it hard and you've got to hit it fast.
Well, and to your point about that, I think this is also worth bringing up. Offensive line issues were not going to be resolved in the portal. You have to have a better plan for that. All the transfers that went out, Xavier Gray, Jordan White, among others, that left Liberty, and getting the next group in and developed. They looked like they were struggling in the spring game. Spring in air quotes, because it was played like early March when it was still really cold. But spring game at Liberty. But the defense, I do think it would have been different because you lost Hardy and you lost TJ Bush. Yes, both of them to that spring window. And they might have transferred anyway, but you would have known about it sooner and been able to have one plan in place to work forward. I do think that's a factor for Liberty. And frankly, I think the transfer portal window as well in the spring could give you a full sense of we could bring extra guys in as opposed to that transfer portal window wraps up in mid-January. These are our linemen. We've got to get to work developing them. And even if they don't look good in spring practice, in the spring game, we need the entire offseason. We're not thinking about having them ready for the spring scrimmage in March or April or whenever Liberty would want to do it in the future. You're thinking have them ready for August so that they can be ready for September, because that has been a lacking area as well for the Flames. I think they're smart enough to figure this out. You've got good coaching staff at Liberty, but it also it's got to be pointed out, because when you're 1-3, you can't just gloss over the fact that there are clear, glaring issues. Meanwhile, we will get to that tomorrow in the Fast Lane. John Manson from MySaveRed.com will do his deep dive on that. Feedback, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and TJ_Wilkerson8 on our social media platforms. When we return, Virginia Tech appears they're getting lots of
dollar bills, y'all,
infused into the football program. Virginia just continuing to plug along on the gridiron. I think you were there for the second half of that.
I was, yeah.
Yes, you were. We'll get your insight later, TJ. But Jerry Ratcliffe will share his. Plus, the other side of that Liberty win. We touched more on Liberties because Shane Metlin will give us the JMU insight when we return. This is the Fast Lane. Covering the Commonwealth comes your way next on the VTR and Sports app and Fast Lane Ed Lane, as well as TJ_Wilkerson8 on our socials.
The Drive into Fall sales event is on at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bedford. Looking for financing as low as 0%? It's yours when you drive home in a 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokee with 3-row seating, or choose a brand new 2025 Ram 1500 and get 0% financing for 72 months. Huge savings are here at the Drive into Fall sales event at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bedford, 1750 Independence Boulevard, MagicCityBedford.com. Through credit, see dealer for details. Hence 9/30/25.
Relaxing in a radiant sunroom, enjoying the breeze in a screen room, or the sun on the deck. No matter the weather, customize how you feel whenever you want. Call Collins Custom Builders. All sunrooms, screen rooms, and decks are built by Collins employees, many with decades of experience, and some who've been with Collins Custom Builders since 1989. That means workers who embrace accountability and are committed to crafting your vision of the perfect sunroom, screen room, or deck. See some of their projects at collinscustombuilders.com, then call Collins Custom Builders.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
Just like the leaves this fall, the deals at Insane Radio Deals are falling fast and saving you a bunch of money. Whether it's gift cards to great food like the Yard on 5th Street, JD's Cafe, the Caribbean Jerk Pot, or Donnie D's Bagels. Or great experiences like Aqua Trek Adventures, Rise Up Climbing, or Cross White Athletic Club. Liberty Flame fan? Well, we have tickets to any Liberty home game the rest of this season, as well as memberships to a Sea of Red. Falling deals and saving money. All at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
I would call you future delegate, future Congressman TJ Wilkerson, but you have a clean enough past that you don't qualify for being an elected official in this country at any level. Republicans and Democrats, I'm going to offend them all for a moment, and independents. I am of the belief that if you're going to be running for office, you almost have to have some kind of dirt, if not publicly, somewhere buried, and they've just covered it up in most cases. Maybe not all of them, but over 50% of them, I just don't seem to trust. I'm that guy, cynical as I might be. Maybe our guests are, maybe they're not. We're not going to put them on the spot with that because there's far too much important information to get to right now in
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
Shane_DNR Sports and DNRonline.com for Shane Metlin with us in the Fast Lane. Shane, great to see you up in the press box over at Liberty University. JMU, 31-13, a game where they controlled it from the entire get-go. More impressive, the balanced offensive approach, or the fact that they were able to really change their game plan up to dare Liberty to try to throw the ball, particularly once quarterback Ethan Vasco left the game with that injury in the late first half.
Yeah, I would say probably the balanced offensive approach, just because we hadn't seen that the previous game out against Louisville. It was 2 weeks ago. They definitely made some changes in the off week. I think, the expectations for the defense were pretty high for JMU coming in. They'd been really good in their first two games. And I think, if you told me they were going to score 31 points, I would have expected them to win the game because I thought it was probably going to be a pretty low scoring one just because JMU's defense has been that good so far.
Meanwhile, you mentioned just how good this JMU defense has been. Is this the upcycle for JMU that's coming to fruition, which is you bring back a talented quarterback who may have had a market if he wasn't severely injured with the knee injury last season, and Alonzo Barnett. You've added the right pieces and retained the right ones in the trenches. That this is the payoff for JMU, which is to have a team that, maybe I was the only one who saw it this way, but they controlled the offensive and defensive line in this game. And even when they were down in the first half at different points, they seemed to always be in control.
Yeah, I think so. And like you said, they did get down in the first half, but that was a case where, they'd been in the red zone a couple times and then come away with points. And that hurt a little bit, but they did seem to kind of move the ball and make it tough on Liberty to move the ball, honestly, like you said, controlling it. When you talk about that defensive front, yeah, it's one of those ones that's put together in kind of an interesting way. You got a guy like Emmanuel Bush there in the middle, that really big guy in the middle, who's one of those guys who paid his dues. He did transfer to JMU, but that seems like an eternity ago. He's been there for 3 years now at this point, and he was behind guys for a while, and now he's a starter. And they went out and got a guy, Aiden Gobera, in the transfer portal, who was one of the top recruits in the state a few years ago, went to Notre Dame, had all kinds of injuries. And he at one point had said, I'm retiring from football. Eventually he got healthy enough that he kind of came to JMU and said, would you have a spot for me, and transfers to JMU. And he looked really, really good on Saturday. So, the defensive line's kind of made up in an interesting way, with a little bit of the portal stuff, a little bit of the guys that they developed. But yeah, they're pretty good in the trenches. Is the short answer to that.
Well, you mentioned the portals, and you can identify they're more ready-made players. But how much of this is a testament to the JMU strength and conditioning, the nutrition staff, and the coaching staff to identify how they can get these guys physically up to par over a year or two of the offseason so that they could be ready for a Liberty team that they kind of had that a couple of years ago, but Liberty has struggled to get that same level of consistency and experience in the trenches over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think so. I think, the strength and conditioning staff has been pretty good at JMU. And Bob Chesney early in the season, early in the preseason, talked a lot about, like, it wasn't hot enough for him at practice. He wished they were getting more experience in the heat. And I was kind of like, a little bit, taken aback by that. And then, you get a game here in late September, that they played on Saturday where the heat kind of was a factor, and they seemed to handle that well. So, yeah, I do think that, that they kind of take those things pretty seriously, and it did pay off for them this week.
You mentioned all of those things that have paid off for the JMU Dukes. A letdown. How do the Dukes avoid that? Or is this a game where they were so methodically in control that you're not worried about that when they welcome Georgia Southern this Saturday?
I think, this is a good week to not have a letdown for JMU, because, it was mentioned all throughout their press stuff today, is that really the only team that's beat them handily in the last few years has been Georgia Southern at Georgia Southern last year. They've lost other games, but those are games that were either close or, maybe the score was misleading. They outperformed teams and had some turnovers or things like that. Like, the only time they've really just lined up and got their butts kicked in the last few years was at Georgia Southern last year. And so I think they're pretty motivated for this one. I'm not saying they're definitely going to win, but they're not going to, like, really get caught in a trap game situation.
We are caught in a web of great analysis, though, at DNRonline.com and at Shane_DNR Sports. I was looking for something cheesy and ridiculous to use, and I appreciate you forgiving us, Shane, for using that in the fast lane. Thank you as well for your time, more importantly.
All right, thanks.
JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor, Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe, who got his first introduction, I believe, to TJ Wilkerson this past weekend up in Charlottesville for the Stanford, Virginia football game. TJ was impressive, but more impressive than TJ. Sorry, TJ. Got to keep it real. Absolutely. Got to keep it real for you. Is the Virginia offense. Are we at the point now where Des Kitchens deserves a little bit of praise, as maligned as he's been, given the fact that in every game this year, even the loss to NC State, this offense, they've come out from the get-go and been on fire, but also been able to adjust as games have progressed?
I think you're right, Ed. And, he was some organization that names national coordinators of the week, named him the ACC Offensive Coordinator of the Week for Virginia's effort. And I think, maybe we do have to give him some kudos, because, for the first time in 4 years, he finally has multiple playmakers. In the past, they've had like one or two guys, and often one of those guys might get nicked up or not even be able to finish the season, like Carl Harris last year, who was probably their only really deep threat, and he missed most of the season. So this year he has multiple playmakers all over the field, and right now Virginia is 11th in the nation in scoring, 45.5 points per game, and fifth in the nation in total offense, 564.5 yards per game, Ed. Those are unchallenged numbers in UVA football history. And it certainly won't stay that way, but they've been lighting it up lately, and you got to give Des some of the credit.
Well, you mentioned that, but also the fact that, it seems like, and again, we've criticized Des Kitchens plenty in the fast lane. I'm sure some of our listeners will let us know. I have, our listeners definitely have it, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and Jerry Ratcliffe as well on Twitter. I mean, that stuff has been rampant for criticism. But I mean, how much of an added level of praise does he get, given that Virginia seem to have done a very good job of rotating different ball touching players into this offense? So for as much money as they are supposedly investing in each of these players, they're able to keep guys pretty happy and give them enough touches to be able to contribute on a high and meaningful level.
Yeah, I mean, they've spread it around really well. I think they had, 11 receivers this past week against Stanford, and four guys plus four running backs plus Cameron Courtney, the talented wide receiver who runs a jet sweep, all shared in carrying the ball. And then Chandler Morris, and he's only finished 1 out of 5 games so far, or 4 games so far, and his numbers are pretty significant. And the offensive line, even though they've had some injuries here and there, they really haven't dropped off in talent by bringing in subs when they need to. So they have spread it around offensively, unlike anything that I've seen in a long time around here. This program hasn't had this kind of depth, maybe ever. I don't know, but certainly going back to either the early Al Groh era or back in the George Welsh era. And I'm not even sure they had this kind of depth.
It's insane to think of just how many pieces this Virginia offense happens to have. Is it enough to get them past FSU in what will undoubtedly be their biggest test of the season this coming Friday? Or is this the type of thing that the defense, their issues are still concerning enough that it may be a shootout, but it's hard to put a lot of faith in that defense right now?
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the determining factor come Friday night, is whether Virginia's defense can slow Florida State down. I don't think Florida State's going to be able to keep Virginia out of the end zone because of what we just discussed, but there's a lot of question marks about whether Virginia's defense can stop a high-powered offense, particularly in the secondary, where they've given up some really big plays in certain games this season, including a 68-yarder the other night against Stanford, who often found some of the receivers behind Virginia's defensive backs.
That's a good point from Jerry Ratcliffe, and we'll see if Lynchburg native Eli Wood can add to his touchdown total as well, as he found a way to contribute the other night in front of our very own TJ Wilkerson and Jerry Ratcliffe, who's been generous enough to join us. Hootie, great to be speaking with you. We appreciate your time in the fast lane. Thank you much, and we'll chat again.
Yeah, nice TD by Eli, by the way. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Yes, we will.
Now to the Virginia Tech Hokies.
With David Cunningham of TechSideline.com, who's with us here in the fast lane. Little picture, then big picture with David. Little picture. Was Saturday's win, if nothing else, against Wofford a chance for Virginia Tech fans to finally cheer what they've seen, and for the players to be able to go, okay, we're not that bad when we can at least control. Granted, Wofford is pretty bad, but we can at least find a way to win and blow off some steam.
Yeah, Ed, I think it was a good opportunity to kind of get right, relax a little bit, get that off your shoulders. When you're 0-3, you probably feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. And to be able to get right, beat up on a team that's not very good, and get in a little bit of a rhythm. I mean, Kyron Drones, I thought he played well at quarterback. He was 27 of 32 for 307 and 2 touchdowns. He accounted for 4 total on the day. I thought on both sides of the ball, the Hokies were able to kind of get in a flow, get some things going, pin their ears back and go defensively, held Wofford to -1 rushing yards. Offensively, moved the ball pretty well. It was a smooth operation. And after everything Tech has been through in the last week or so, I think it was a good opportunity to just get back on the right foot, win a game, go out on the field, and just get back to playing football and having fun. There's so much going on, and this is going to be a tough season. 8 ACC games up ahead, and Hokies aren't going to be favored in many of them. How many of them they win, we'll see. But to be able to go get a win after everything you've been through, I think it was very satisfying and very rewarding, and nice to see a lot of smiles around the facility after the game.
So that's the good thing for Virginia Tech, is they were able to exercise all of that against Wofford. Meanwhile, they go to NC State this coming Saturday. Did the offense show you enough that they could be able to make this, if nothing else, an interesting and entertaining game, and maybe give the Hokies a chance to pull off a surprising upset in game 2 of our college football doubleheader, which starts with Auburn and Texas A&M on Saturday?
Yeah, I think so. This NC State defense has looked kind of susceptible so far through the first couple of games. I'm more concerned about Tech's defense than offense, considering it was the defense who kind of got gashed in that Old Dominion and Vanderbilt games back to back. It looked better, but still hasn't really been challenged. The biggest thing to me is, can the Virginia Tech offense get into a rhythm early against this NC State team? I think it showed a lot. Multiple running backs touching the ball. Marcellus Hawkins, PJ Prelude, both look pretty good. Have different receivers made plays. Devin Alves, Aiden Green. They spread the ball around, and I thought Drones looked very comfortable in the pocket. Wofford sat very far back, and Kyron had to go through a lot of checkdowns. But it shows that he's progressing a little bit as a passer and can go to that second or third read. I think that's a good thing, considering you're going to have a bunch of different defenses throwing things at you. I don't know that this NC State group is as tough as some of the other groups that Tech will face down the line. You're talking about Florida State, Miami, Louisville, Georgia Tech. But I think this is an opportunity that if the Hokies kind of control things, if they can control the clock, if they can slowly move the ball, have methodical drives, don't turn the ball over, get some stops. I mean, this is not an NC State team that is a bunch of world beaters. Almost lost, maybe should have lost to Virginia. Did not look very good down the stretch against Duke. I think it's kind of a 50-50 toss-up. And if I'm Virginia Tech, if I'm Philip Montgomery, I'm telling these guys, look, if you go out there and play clean football, you will have a chance to win. And I thought the way Tech operated under Montgomery in that 2-minute drill, or more like 45-second drill at the end of that first half, very, very fluid. They did a very good job of working it, and they had an opportunity to kick a 59-yard field goal at the end of regulation or end of the first half. You know, who knows if they obviously missed, and it could have been a closer field goal had, you know, they not had a guy step out of bounds and whatnot. But I think you're seeing Tech be a little bit better in some of those smaller areas. You do some things like that correct this next week against NC State, and who knows? You could have a real opportunity to win the game by the time the fourth quarter rolls around.
Oh, as we shift to bigger picture topics with David Cunningham of TechSideline.com, TS Tech Sideline on Twitter, The Real D-Cunna on Twitter and Instagram, and we're at Fastlane, Edlane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Is this enough progress? And will there be enough to stem the potential of players entering the transfer portal and departing as they get closer and closer to that 4+ games played limit? Or, if nothing else, they play their best for Virginia Tech, knowing that however the new coaching staff shakes out, they might head there anyway, but at least they've got better film.
Yeah, I think it's a toss-up, Ed. I think at this point, you get to college football, and even in the pros, everybody's playing for themselves at this point. But you do see some leaders step up. I thought Kelvin Gilliam was pretty passionate in what he said. And this team will rally around, but you're never going to have, I think, everybody bought in. I think that's tough. You already saw Dante Lovett enter the portal. Kelvin Gilliam mentioned that there was a second guy, but we haven't heard anything of a second player enter the portal. But the bottom line is that, I think Tech will have a core group of guys that will stick together. You're probably not going to have everybody, because that's just the way it is with this day and age, transfer portal and NIL and revenue sharing. But this is an uphill climb. I don't think many people expect Tech to win many games the rest of the year. They're going to be the underdog in just about every single game they play. But if they kind of go and execute and get back to the basics, have fun playing football, first of all, but also just take care of the football, play tough, play for 4 quarters. I thought that was the best 4 quarters of football Tech has played. Granted, against an FCS team, but Tech played a complete game, which you hadn't been able to say first couple of games of the year. So if they continue to tinker with it, and if the coaches can continue to put the players in the right position, I think that'll be a step forward. But yeah, obviously there are bigger picture topics at hand, and the way the coaching search goes and whatnot. That of course looms over everybody. And at the end of the day, in a couple months, there will be a new coach in Blacksburg.
Now comes the big picture stuff with David Cunningham of TechSideline.com, as the Virginia Tech Board of Visitors will vote on the 229.2, if I can get my numbers out, $229.2 million in additional funding for Virginia Tech athletics that's spread out over the next 4 years. Can we get the obvious out of the way? You're not voting on this unless it's going to be approved, correct?
Yes, I would believe so. As Andy Bitter and Chris Coleman discussed on the podcast, it would be like you getting down on one knee and proposing if you weren't 100% sure they were going to say yes.
That's an easy explanation. Now comes the other questions about this money. Is this sustainable? What are the origins of this, and how sustainable is this money for Virginia Tech athletics?
I think it is sustainable if properly managed. And that's a very broad answer, Ed. I think if Virginia Tech does its due diligence consistently and stays on top of it. I mean, you look at that breakdown. Andy Bitter wrote an article earlier. It's free to read. Go check it out. We helped put some numbers in there about just the way it breaks down. 120 of this $229 million is going to come from philanthropy. We understand that part of that is going to come from the university side too. It's not just going to be the Hokie Club raising this money, but that's a lot. That's a big ask from donors. Now, I don't think they would say that if they didn't already have some idea of where that was going to come from, but it's going to be a group and collective effort. It's not just going to be, hey, the university is going to give us $220 million, right? It's going to have to come from a lot of different places. I think it is sustainable, but think about this. The money's always going to go up. So you're going to have to continue to raise this $20.5 million for revenue sharing on top of continuing to find new ways to do things. The bottom line is this. The Hokies cannot be complacent, Ed. They cannot be complacent. They can't come out here, roll this out, and go, well, we're done. We did our part. Because this is an ever-changing landscape. This is a constantly evolving world of athletics. And if you come out here and just say, well, we're in a good spot now, other people will pass you. And I think the challenge now is, look, you're ahead of the curve in a lot of spots. In theory, this Virginia Tech adding $47 million for this year, for the fiscal year 2026 onto its budget, that puts Tech in the top 5, at least in the top quarter, but probably the top 5 of athletic budgets in the ACC. In terms of public schools, that's only behind Florida State and Clemson. That's good, but can you sustain it? You asked if is it sustainable? It comes down to the people in charge. It comes down to them monitoring and continuing to evolve and continuing to make sure that everybody's doing their part. And you have to continue to get investments from, in terms of the Hokie Club, continue to get investments from fans and donors and whatnot. But at the same time, you have to continue to do your part on the inside. Make sure that the athletic department's a well-oiled machine. And guess what? Winning football games would certainly help generate more money, especially in this day and age where viewership matters, making the college football playoff matters. It's all tied together. But I think to answer your question, it is sustainable if you're doing the right thing. You're just kind of sitting back and letting it run its course and not really monitoring it. You could get into some big trouble with this, especially considering how much money you're putting in it now.
So we'll tie all this together with David Cunningham of TechSideline.com as we will discuss and are discussing the big investment financially from the Board of Visitors. It was leaked on Saturday, which seems to coincide with a certain reporter's appearance on a certain well-publicized and very popular college football pregame show. And when that reporter often tweets out sources or inside information, it's often agent-driven. Am I right to presume that there was some strategic decision-making on Virginia Tech of starting to leak around that time? Because if said reporter were to leak this information on said popular pregame show, it might spread around the agent community and be able to be more than just an agent's leveraging chip, but actually land Virginia Tech big-time qualified coaching candidates.
I think so, Ed. As one athletic director in the Commonwealth often says, every leak has a motive, and you have to wonder where that came from. That athletic director has also been known to leak things himself and to put people in different directions away from the trail. But no, I think that was a smart play on Virginia Tech's part, because what the Hokies have done, and of course the Board of Visitors has to put out this information ahead of when it's meeting, which is September 30th, so in 8 days. But what this does now, it puts it out in the open. That reporter you're talking about, him going on that pregame show and saying, this is where Virginia Tech stands. People pay attention to that, Ed. And we talked about it this morning on our podcast, which I encourage everyone to go listen to. We talked about this. This opens the candidate pool for Virginia Tech, because it's not like you're just sitting here around, we've got $4.5–5 million to spend. You could probably spend $8, $9, $10 million on a head coach now if you wanted to. You could compete with the big dogs now, the Florida States and Clemson's, in terms of this is how much money we want to invest in a football coach if you wanted to. And I think Virginia Tech wants to. So people have been looking at these group of 5 head coaches. Your Bob Chesney's up at the road at James Madison, right? I think you could turn your attention now to some Power 4 sitting head coaches and go, hey, you interested in coming to coach at Virginia Tech? We got a rabid fan base, and we are going to invest in football. There's a lot on the table now, Ed. I think this is the most important moment for Virginia Tech athletics in a very long time, and it's important that the people at the top get these decisions right. But you're putting one foot in front of the other and headed in the right direction now that you've got this revenue sharing and this the 20.5 from revenue sharing, but also this giant investment increasing the athletic department budget, because it shows that, hey, we are legit and we want to compete and be the best we can at football. And that's what every coach wants to hear.
Well, we know it's not Duke or Virginia because they have female athletic directors, and you said he leaked that information. So, or he likes to talk about every leak has a motive. So we at least narrowed it down a smidge from David Cunningham of TechSideline.com. You don't have to narrow down your spot for great Hokie insight and analysis. The latest TSL podcast and TechSideline.com, they are packed with info. David, thank you for sharing some of those perspectives today in the Fast Lane.
Much appreciated. Talk to you soon.
David Cunningham with us here in the Fast Lane. That wraps up for part 1 of covering the Commonwealth. Part 2 when we return. Washington Commanders. Impressive. Granted, you could doubt the Raiders, but they looked impressive. In NASCAR yesterday at New Hampshire. Do we have a new favorite and maybe the firm favorite going forward in the chase for the championship? Plus, my guy deserved to be called out. We'll get insight on that as well. This is the Fast Lane, VTR in Sports app, and as that smart speaker, open VTR in Sports.
It's so worth the drive to big savings at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. Shop local and save more with exceptional service and selection. Your search stops here with over 900 pre-owned vehicles to choose from, plus a huge selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles, all in one location. The Sheeler Motor Mile gives you more choices with pre-owned cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. More than any other dealer in the area, plus exceptional service, selection, savings, and financing options, and top dollar for your trade. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume with 11 new car brands and over 900 used vehicles, all in one location. And we're proud to support our local schools and community. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier car dealer, locally and family-owned for over 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
In most things, it's hard to go from ordinary to extraordinary. It's easy with your home or business. Call the Concrete Wizard and transform your place into an extraordinary space. If you're tired of looking at unsightly concrete, then bring light to your old surfaces. Call the Concrete Wizard for free design consultations, free estimates, and fast professional concrete resurfacing. And visit theconcretewizard.com for ideas from other before and after photos.
Feel the excitement, experience the intensity. Castle Coliseum comes alive when Hokie basketball takes the court.
He made it on 1 foot. Lead, it's down.
From buzzer beaters to hard-fought battles, Virginia Tech men's and women's basketball takes on the toughest teams in the ACC.
Up and in. Here come the Hokies. So erupts.
Don't just hear about it, be there. Tickets on sale now at Hokiesports.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
That was a pleasant surprise for the Washington Commanders. And we discuss it now in part 2 of
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with, just for you haters, left hand up the Commanders.
Yes, and my guy, the more athletic Lane, Jalen Lane, finding the end zone yesterday on that punt return for a touchdown for the Washington Commanders. He just happened to get the genetic lottery that the Lane family eluded me, unfortunately, TJ. I'm sorry to tell you I didn't get it. He did. Seawall, you got to be graced yesterday. Congratulations, Madam President of Bowie TV Sports. You should be honored that you got to see those Lane athletic genes on display yesterday in a Washington Commanders victory. I'm sure you were the one that was beaming most proud when you were watching from the stadium press box.
Oh, as you all know, I'm a special teamer. As you all know, I had a lot to say when the Commanders drafted Jalen Lane, and I will be very transparent and tell you all, when he scored that touchdown, I definitely said, oh my gosh, Jalen is going to make me mess up my makeup. Wait a minute. I started fanning my mascara like, hold on. No. Because, wow, what a long time coming it has been for this Washington team to have a strong returner, and that is what they have. Yes, in Debo, but in their rookie Jalen Lane, I was so happy for him. And let me also tell you all, I don't know what the TV version showed, but once it was announced, officially called that was the TD was going to stand, his teammates completely erupted. They were so happy for him. So what a very special first career touchdown in the NFL for him.
Yeah, we didn't get the A-Team network broadcasts on that. So in between watching and, of course, listening to the Rams-Eagles thriller on the VTR and Sports app, kind of juggling that while with one of my kids at my mom's house, his grandma's house. It was worth it, but in a much different capacity. But Seawall, so this win yesterday, little picture, I guess bigger picture, you've touched on the value of special teams for the Washington Commanders, and we touched on it in kicking and kick coverage. How much does this re-emphasize the fact that for a Commanders team, particularly without its starting quarterback in Jaden Daniels, they needed to win in those extra phases, and boy, did they.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, starting from the very first play on offense at kickoff, right? That Debo Samuel return, right? Again, that set them up very, just in a great field position to get that ball rolling and running down the field and get it ready for a touchdown there. Again, Jalen's touchdown. I mean, strong special teams play set it up for 14 points.
That's
right?
big.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's big for the Washington Commanders and what they were able to put together. You combine that with the defense. How much of this performance yesterday with the more athletic Lane, Jalen Lane's punt return, touchdown, Debo Samuel as well, the defense and coming to play, how much of this performance is a reflection of what Adam Peters did in the offseason to give this roster enough pieces that, again, if you have a game or two without Jaden Daniels because of his injury, which he had, and you might have another one coming up, you can sustain that and at least win, maybe not every game, maybe not against your elite teams like the Packers and others, but you got a chance to win these type of winnable games and keep yourself afloat.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what you want to be looking for, is where you can, because they really do honor every phase of the game, the offense, the defense, and the special teams. You talk about the Rams-Eagles thriller, right? Special teams play wins the game for the Eagles. Special teams play matters, and it's one of those just forgotten about skills and skill sets and units, but some great things could happen on special teams, depending on what side of the team, what side of the field you're on, or some disastrous things can happen. And with the Commanders, they're going to need continue to have that strong special teams front. The teams are going to have to plan extra for now, right? Because it was one thing to have to plan for Deebo Samuels, but look, they should have been watching Coaching from the Couch. They should have been tuning into your show when I was on, because I would have told them they should have been warned about Jalen Lane. So now they're going to know the Commanders are really getting stronger each week in all phases of the game.
Coaching from the Couch, Bowie TV Sports, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts. I mean, we don't care. You can consume the great insight and boost our listening numbers. I mean, they're great, but we always take more. Or you can ignore them at your own peril, which seems to have happened. Little picture. Atlanta Falcons, I mean, my goodness. Do we know what version of the Falcons the Commanders are going to get? The version that didn't even show up, especially offensively against Carolina yesterday, or the version that went on the road to Minnesota? How do you know if you're the Commanders for this Sunday's game, 1 o'clock, which I believe, got to check, but I believe you'll be able to hear on the VTR and Sports app?
You don't know, because this could very well be here we go, trap game. If there was ever a definition of a trap game, so players and coaches do not like that term. I've learned, but for us, if we were ever to label something a trap game, this would absolutely be it, because the Falcons absolutely need a win after the way they started this season, and especially after what happened yesterday. They absolutely need to score. Their offensive coordinator, I'm sure, is under fire, and they're going to need to score some points. So the Commanders need to be really prepped and ready, and treat them like they would if they were one of the elite.
And it is, by the way, it is on our network. We will have that game. Game 2 of our quadruple header starts with the Vikings at, in air quotes, the Steelers, 9:15 from London this coming Sunday. Then Washington, Atlanta, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Green Bay, Dallas. Marquee games, marquee teams, marquee opponents on your home for the best, including Monday Night Football tonight, by the way. VTR and Sports app powered by ESPN Radio. Seawall, we'll wrap it up on this last one for you. Day-to-day, Jaden Daniels once again. Is this day-to-day as in you expect him back? Is this day-to-day as in the Commanders can now afford to wait and see because they've shown they can win without Daniels?
I think it's day-to-day. Let's see how he goes, but they're not going to rush it. I think the Commanders, we all saw yesterday, they have an opportunity to continue to do what they're doing and allow Jaden Daniels to come back 100%. And I think that is probably an ideal situation to be in right now.
It is. Much like the insight, it's ideal at Bowie TV Sports. CEO Seawall on Instagram and Seawall SE on Twitter. For our girl, Madam President, boots on the ground for VTR and Sports powered by ESPN Radio, Candy Waller. Seawall, thank you for your time in the Fast Lane.
Thank you so much, and I'll be talking to you guys again soon.
It's always our pleasure. Seawall with us in the Fast Lane on W227BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville Southside, and the VTR and Sports app powered by ESPN Radio. We'll go late to, Coleman and Douglas because, we like them, great people and all, but they can hold on for a second because we have more important business to get to. Oh, it's definitely not least. With Chase Folsom of FrontStretch.com. Chase, it's the most important business, which is, I got to get my confession on. And we can get to Ryan Blaney in a moment. Ty Gibbs and Denny Hamlin. I'm anti-Ty Gibbs in this situation. I am pro the rest of Joe Gibbs Racing's drivers. If you're running for, positioning for the win, and Ty Gibbs has never made victory lane, I get why he would be very aggressive with his teammates because he needs the win. Yes, they do for the playoffs, but he needs one to just get one. But when you're battling back there for who's going to be 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th, is this a spot where you've got to just have the presence of mind to realize there's certain times to be more aggressive than others, and Ty Gibbs deserved what Denny Hamlin gave him, which is a lesson learned the hard way?
I kind of see both sides of it because on one hand, if you're Ty Gibbs, yes, you're racing for 11th, 12th, and 13th, which is where the Gibbs cars were at that point. It's early on in the race. Maybe you should let your two playoff teammates go, work for the company, not just yourself, especially when your last name is on the side of the company's building. But on the other hand, if you're Denny Hamlin, you've still got a third of a playoff race to go. Why did he get so uptight about that situation? He kind of risked his own playoff chances because what if he gets himself caught up in the mess that he created with Ty Gibbs? So I think both drivers were kind of driving over their heads for that early in a race at New Hampshire where a lot of things can happen. The tire wear was really good yesterday, so the race still had a lot to play out. And I just kind of felt like the entire situation was unnecessary. But as for Ty Gibbs, he kind of did that exact thing to a certain teammate in Brandon Jones a couple of years ago at Martinsville, so maybe he's had that one coming for a while, some would say. I'm not going to pick a side, but I could see both sides of it for sure.
I mean, look, I'm as team Ty Gibbs as it gets here in the fast lane, but I've got to be honest that I'm more team Denny in this particular situation because Ty Gibbs needs to learn some levels of maturity to help him be a better driver. He's got all the talent in the world, but the maturity has just been a real concern and issue. Joe Gibbs Racing and how Ty's granddad handled this situation, basically deferring it over to the drivers. How do you view that through the context of not just covering this for frontstretch.com, but also the context of how that will be received in the driver community?
Well, on one hand, I think it actually may be a positive thing because it's depending on how this plays out, it forces Ty to learn that Joe can't continue to fix these decisions for him. He has to fix them on his own. And I think it kind of shows the level of job security that Denny feels like he has, that he can openly say, you know, are they afraid to talk to him? I felt like that was really interesting that Denny just openly said that he felt like the team is scared of Ty. I'm just curious to see how it plays out in the future, whether they can, you know, patch things up and mend the relationship, or if this is something that plays on, because if the team's not going to step in, it's going to be Denny's established. It's going to be on Ty to step up and show the maturity to iron things out so that there isn't an issue going forward.
Your colleague Amy Anderson's got a great article on this at frontstretch.com. Chase Folsom is with us in the fast lane. And it brings all this to perspective about Ty Gibbs having a chance to maybe have avenged not finishing a job at Bristol. This is where I'll disagree with her politely and professionally. I don't think anyone had a chance because Ryan Blaney looked like the driver to beat and prove that out over the course of this race. And in the process, true or false, he has asserted himself as the driver to beat for the championship because he's already in the round of 8. He may not win there, but you've got Talladega where he's run well on those tapered spacers, Martinsville where he's won kind of quietly in the fall before. And if you run well or win at both of those, you're at Phoenix where we just saw a similar track play out very well for Blaney.
Certainly so. I mean, you look at that last round, yes, he's got a couple Talladega wins. He's a 2-time defending winner of the fall race at Martinsville. But you just look at the Penske performance on the flat tracks. The closest thing we have to Phoenix is New Hampshire. And it's about time for the Penske cars to show up in the playoffs like they seemingly always do, especially in this next-gen era. They came out on Sunday, and them along with Josh Berry, who is essentially a fourth Penske car, were without a doubt the cars to beat. They were in another zip code, and it just goes tracks to show up late in the season. It's going to keep happening, and they've still got it. And when they go to Phoenix, I don't think anything is going to be differently. The only way I see Blaney not being the championship favorite is if his teammate Joey Logano can join him in the Final Four should they both make it that far. I, for one, see Blaney making it that far. I think he's too strong at the round of 8 tracks and has too much time now to prepare for him to not at least point his way in, even if he can't win one of those 3 races. I think it's more about, does Logano make it? Because if Logano makes it, then you've got 2 Penske cars you know are going to be fantastic at Phoenix. So it's going to be hard to pick one or the other as the favorite.
It is something that will make it interesting. We look forward to monitoring it at frontstretch.com. Chase Folsom with us in the fast lane. Chase, glad to have you back. We love catching up, and we appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure as always.
Chase Folsom with us to wrap up the fast lane. That does it for us today. Now on to ESPN Radio here on the VTR and Sports app. And then tonight, 7:30, Monday Night Football should be a good one. Detroit and Baltimore. We'll touch on all of this tomorrow in the fast lane, 5 to 6-ish. VTR and Sports app at 93.3 FM.
Decisions, throw it, be accurate, that whole 9. Russell Wilson, what he does the best as a quarterback is throw the deep ball.